Listen carefully. If you are struggling to succeed, if you have tried and pushed and worked and still find yourself stuck, there is something you must understand before you take one more step. Success is not determined by how much you know nor by how hard you try. It is not governed by luck, nor is it distributed by the hands of fate. Success is reserved for the man who aligns himself with law. Not the law of man, but the law of mind. The law of definite purpose. The law that governs all achievement. And until you grasp this, until you take hold of it with the strength of your full conviction, you will continue to struggle, no matter how sincere your efforts may be. There is one thing, and it is not theory, it is not strategy, it is not a motivational phrase. It is a law, a mental law, a spiritual law, and it is this. You must possess a definiteness of purpose and back it with a burning desire. This is the missing piece in 95% of those who chase success and fall short. Not talent, not opportunity, not intelligence, but clarity. The man who lacks clear purpose is like a ship without a rudder. He may be built for the sea, he may have fuel in the engine, but he drifts endlessly, blown by whichever wind screams loudest that day. But the man who possesses a clear aim, backed by absolute conviction, moves like a guided missile. He may face storms, but he will not be diverted. He may be delayed, but he will not be denied. If you are struggling now, if your results are inconsistent, if you feel like you are doing everything and yet nothing is changing, I ask you, what do you want? Not vaguely, not generally, not in poetic terms. What do you specifically want? What result must exist in your life to make all this effort worthwhile? Can you state it without stuttering, without rewriting it every week, without shrinking it to fit the expectations of others? Most men cannot. They walk with blurred vision. They run in circles. They build halfway, and then they wonder why their life feels like a loop. Success responds to clarity backed by courage. If you are not definite, you are replaceable. If your dream is uncertain, the world will ignore it. You must begin here by writing, by speaking, by declaring, by defining exactly what it is you intend to become, do, or possess. Not someday, not if the economy changes, now. And then, once you have that image, you must pour your whole self into it. Your hours, your habits, your hunger. Because purpose without desire is a weak flame, but purpose with burning desire, that is a fire no man can extinguish. Burning desire is not about wishing. Wishing is what the weak do. They want without paying the price. But desire, the kind that rewrites your life, that is a spiritual force. It is a demand placed on your subconscious that says, this is who I am now. It is not just wanting more. It is becoming more long before the world recognizes the change. You must build a white-hot obsession with the image of your fulfilled goal. It must take root in your speech, your thoughts, your actions, your daily rituals, until your old self can no longer survive in your new atmosphere. I have studied the greatest minds to ever walk the earth, Carnegie, Edison, Ford, Rockefeller, and in every one of them I found the same trait. Not intelligence, not charm, but unshakable purpose. They decided once, and they never undecided. They picked a target, and no matter how many failures, no matter how many closed doors, no matter how many betrayals, they kept walking. Because to them, the vision was already real. The world simply had not caught up yet. And this is the secret that most never hear. Your results will always arrive on a delay. The vision comes first. The belief second. The results last. And the time between the belief and the result is the test most men do not pass. That is where the desire must live. In the valley of waiting, in the valley of silence. In the days where progress is invisible and doubts scream louder than faith, that is where you show the universe who you are. Because if you quit then, if you waver, If you start all over again with a new idea, a new plan, a new dream, you break the process. And a broken process cannot compound. But if you stay, if you press forward, even when it hurts, even when it's lonely, even when nothing makes sense, that is when the law bends in your favor. The greatest transformation in a man's life does not happen when he reaches the mountaintop. It happens in the climb, when he chooses to keep going without applause. When he decides that his purpose is real, even if the world hasn't seen the fruit of it yet, that decision, that inner allegiance to your vision is what rewires the mind. It is what activates the subconscious to begin filtering reality in service of your aim. Because the subconscious cannot do anything without a command. It does not respond to vague hopes. It does not obey casual intention. It is moved only by definiteness. And once it receives that definiteness from you, with repetition and emotion, it goes to work on your behalf in ways you cannot yet see. Doors will open. People will appear. Patterns will emerge. But none of it starts until you start. Not in the outer world, in the inner one. Because that is where every outcome begins, not in the doing, but in the being. And being must always precede becoming. You cannot attract wealth while identifying as poor. You cannot build power while thinking like a victim. You cannot dominate your lane while living in hesitation. You must be bold in your thought long before you are respected in your results. And boldness, when it springs from purpose, is not arrogance, it is alignment. A man aligned with purpose is a magnet. You feel his energy before he speaks. You feel his certainty before he produces a single result. Because certainty, once established in the spirit, cannot be faked and cannot be ignored. And when it is paired with discipline, it becomes unstoppable. Because no force on earth is greater than a man who has decided who he is and acts in harmony with that decision day after day after day. If you are struggling right now, it is not because you are broken. It is because you are disconnected. You are living in scattered effort. You are planting 10 seeds in 10 fields and watering none of them long enough to see them bloom. You are following 10 ideas, 10 opinions, 10 pieces of advice, but not one clear voice inside yourself. And that voice, that inner voice, it must be elevated above all else. You must make it the final authority. Not your fears, not the circumstances, not even your past. Because your past has no power unless you give it permission to stay. Every day you wake up without purpose is a day you hand your life to random chance. But when you wake up with intention, when you begin with clarity, backed by desire, driven by discipline, everything changes. Your thoughts become sharper. Your choices become cleaner. Your energy becomes magnetic. And soon, you will begin to see what most never see, the shift, that invisible pivot when the momentum moves in your favor. But remember, it does not arrive without the process. And the process requires faith. Not in the world, not in others, but in yourself. That is where everything begins. Self-faith, self-trust, self-command. And that trust is earned through behavior. You must become the kind of man who keeps his word, who honors his plan, who does not need to feel good to act good, who does not need comfort to be consistent. And once you become that man, the world will yield to you, not immediately, but inevitably. Because the world bows to consistency. It rewards the uncommon. It responds to the man who has become undeniable. You must become undeniable, not through volume, not through force, but through presence. To the quiet, resolute energy of a man who has decided once and for all that nothing will stop him from fulfilling the purpose that burns in his bones. That is the one thing, the foundation of all success. A definite purpose backed by burning desire expressed in daily discipline. That is the formula. It has never changed. It never will. And once you accept it, everything else becomes simple. not easy, but clear. Now that you have planted your feet in the soil of definiteness, now that you have grasped the vital truth that success begins with a burning desire wrapped around a definite purpose, you must understand the next phase of the journey. And this, too, will demand something from you that most men are unwilling to give. It will demand persistence in the face of invisibility. It will demand belief long before proof arrives. And it will demand action that is rooted not in results but in responsibility. Because once you've declared what you want, the world does not hand it to you wrapped in convenience. It tests you. It asks, "Are you sure?" And it will keep asking until your actions scream louder than your doubts. When you begin to walk in purpose, the struggle does not disappear, it often intensifies. You begin to notice just how much resistance surrounds every meaningful step. The habits you must shed, the people who doubt you, the circumstances that seem to stretch your limits. But let me remind you, this is not failure. This is friction. And friction is the friend of forward motion. It is proof that you are no longer living as a passenger. It is the confirmation that you are now the one steering the wheel of your own life. Friction sharpens you. It smooths out your distractions. It cuts away the parts of you that no longer belong in the future you are building. But that future will not arrive because you want it. It will not be summoned by wishing. It will come only through a precise exchange, your current self for your higher self. And that exchange is not made in a moment. It is made in 1,000 moments of struggle, repetition, endurance, and the refusal to compromise. Because every time you choose to operate from discipline instead of emotion, you align yourself with the man you were born to be. Every time you act when others would wait, you step closer to mastery. And every time you say no to what is easy in favor of what is essential, you become something most men will never understand. You must no longer be satisfied with being understood by the average. You must no longer seek validation from those who have not tasted vision. Because the path you are walking now, the path of definite purpose, is a path only a few will ever follow. And many will call you obsessed. They will label your intensity as extremism. They will project their own mediocrity onto your mission. But hear me clearly. Obsession is only a danger when it is tied to ego. When it is tied to purpose, it is not obsession, it is alignment. And alignment is the highest form of power a man can operate in. It is when thought, word, emotion, and action all speak the same language. Most people never live in alignment, they live in fragments. One day they are committed, the next they are confused. One week they are focused, the next they are flailing. 1 month they are building, and the next they are back where they started. Why? Because they are emotionally governed, they are ruled by moods, and moods are inconsistent masters. But when you anchor your behavior in purpose, when you wake up and act not because you feel like it, but because you've decided, you become immune to the storm. The world may shake, but you do not bend. And in time, the world begins to reflect back the order you have established within yourself. That is the law. The inner precedes the outer. What you build within will always express itself in what you build around you. If your mind is clear, your results will become clean. If your spirit is focused, your path will reveal itself. But if your thoughts are scattered, if your values are for sale, if your vision changes with every failure, then your results will mirror that chaos. The world does not give you what you want. It gives you what you are. And that is why this journey begins not with effort, but with identity. Who are you now? Who have you chosen to become? And do your behaviors reflect that choice? If you say you are a disciplined man, then your calendar should confirm it. If you say you are a man of vision, then your environment should echo it. If you say you are a leader, then your daily standards must rise above the pull of comfort, because there is no such thing as a life built in contradiction. Sooner or later, your outer world will expose what you've allowed to remain hidden inside. And if you are struggling now, if you are not getting the results you desire, you must not look outward for the cause. You must look inward and ask, where have I compromised? Where have I accepted a standard that contradicts the life I claim to want? This is not condemnation. This is liberation. Because once you take full responsibility, once you stop blaming the world, the market, the timing, the luck, you regain your power. You stop waiting to be chosen. You choose yourself. You stop hoping for opportunity. You create opportunity. You stop running from the work. You run into it. And you discover that the very thing you once feared, discipline, structure, sacrifice, is not a prison. It is your path to freedom. The world is filled with men who are frustrated not because they lack potential, but because they have ignored the power of decision. They drift through life with intention, but no execution. They speak boldly, but act inconsistently. They dream vividly, but move timidly. But you must no longer be one of them. The moment you decided on a definite purpose, you became a new man. But that man must now be supported by a new way of living. A man of purpose cannot continue in the habits of indecision. He cannot carry the identity of who he used to be. He cannot show up some days and disappear on others. He must be all in, or he is not in at all. That is what the world respects, not perfection, but consistency. The world opens for the man who shows up daily, not dramatically, who works when it's hard, who stays when it's boring, who moves when others freeze, who sacrifices what's comfortable to gain what's meaningful. You must ask yourself, am I that man? Do I live like one who has already won? Or do I wait for results to determine my effort? Because effort must precede reward. Not once, but always. The laws of success are not confused. They are clear, and they are always watching. You do not get to choose the result without first choosing the process. You do not get to demand the rewards of excellence while practicing the habits of the average. And you do not become extraordinary by accident. It is done with repetition, with precision, with practice that goes beyond performance and becomes identity. The man who repeats with intention becomes unstoppable, not because he is the best, but because he has become inevitable. You must now look at your life with brutal honesty. Every area that is not growing is reflecting a part of you that has remained undecided. If your finances are scattered, it is because your intention around wealth is scattered. If your relationships are weak, it is because your leadership is passive. If your health is inconsistent, it is because your standards have been too negotiable. But the good news, the truth that should ignite you, is that all of it can change. Not in years, not in some distant future, but today. The moment you decide, the moment you stop tolerating misalignment, the moment you choose to live every hour, every action, every word in service of the man you've chosen to become, that man is not born of convenience. He is born of commitment. And commitment is not a feeling. It is a decision repeated until it becomes a reputation. You build that reputation every day with every promise you keep, every excuse you silence, every priority you protect. That is how trust is built, not only with others, but with yourself. And self-trust is the cornerstone of all power. When you trust yourself, you no longer wait. You move. You build. You execute. You lead. And the world has no choice but to follow. The shift you seek in your life, the transformation, the success, the fulfillment, it does not begin with better timing or more information. It begins with the one thing, definite purpose, backed by burning desire, expressed in disciplined behavior, and sustained by emotional mastery. This is the formula. It has been the same since the beginning of time. And once you align with it, you will find that your struggle was never against the world. It was against the part of you that feared commitment. But now that you've committed, the war is over. And what lies ahead is no longer uncertain. It is unfolding exactly as it should. You've now stepped onto the path walked by every man who has ever risen from obscurity to greatness. The path of clarity, of purpose, of decision. But understand this, decision alone does not secure success. It unlocks the gate, yes, but you must now walk the miles. And those miles will test you in ways no book, no speech, no theory ever can. Because the cost of success is not paid in moments of ease. It is paid in your daily ability to honor your purpose when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when no results show up to confirm your effort. This is where most quit. This is where most abandon the purpose they once claimed to love. But you are not most. You must become one of the few who remain when others flee, the few who persist through fatigue, the few who fight through silence. Because there is a moment, if not many, on this journey where nothing outside of you will be enough to keep you going. Not inspiration, not praise, not even early results. The only thing that can carry you through these moments is the identity you forged in the fire. And identity is not built in a day. It is built in the act of refusing to betray yourself over and over and over again. When you are tired and you choose discipline, identity strengthens. When you feel doubt and you choose focus, identity sharpens. When you are tempted to lower your standard and you hold the line, identity expands. And this internal identity, this self-image built through evidence and action, is what ultimately creates your outcomes. It is not luck. It is not timing. It is not whether someone gave you a shot. It is whether or not you've become the kind of man who commands results by who he is, not just by what he does. And make no mistake, who you are is the real engine of achievement. The results are just reflections. The money, the accolades, the growth, these are shadows of a man who decided to live by law instead of by impulse. They are the byproducts of a man who stopped waiting for the perfect moment and became the moment himself. That's what power is. Not noise, not performance, but unshakable congruence. When your thoughts, your words, your actions, your beliefs all say the same thing, that is when you become undeniable. But do not think this path is passive. The man who truly lives from purpose must also become ruthless in his execution. Ruthless with his time, ruthless with his boundaries, ruthless with the old habits and patterns that keep trying to seduce him back into mediocrity. This is the part few talk about. They speak of dreams and destiny, but they forget that destiny has requirements. It requires sacrifice. It requires subtraction. It requires walking alone for seasons where comfort might be easier, but alignment demands solitude. You will not be celebrated for your silence. You will not always be understood in your elevation. But the reward for walking this path is not just found in what you achieve. It is found in what you survive. The battles within, the inner storms you've conquered without applause. The nights where doubt screamed and discipline whispered, and you chose to obey the whisper. The days where failure seemed inevitable, but you still showed up like a man on a mission. Those days are your crown. They are your resume. They are what separate you from the 98% who talk, wish, and retreat. You are not here to retreat. You are here to rise. And rising is a function of repetition. You must learn to love the repetition, to train your mind, to find energy in the mundane, to see beauty in the consistency. Because repetition, when connected to purpose, is no longer a chore, it becomes sacred. Every rep, every session, every block of deep focus, every hour protected from distraction. These are your rituals now. These are the bricks you lay to build a life no man can tear down. And that life, your future, will not arrive as an event. It will not show up overnight. It will not appear on a calendar. It is not scheduled. It is built slowly, steadily, by who you are when it's not convenient, by who you are when the world forgets you, by who you are when the only voice you hear is your own, and that voice must be fortified. It must speak like a man who is done negotiating with comfort, like a man who no longer consults fear before taking the next step, like a man who no longer begs for momentum, he creates it. Momentum is a force that comes not from results, but from motion. It comes from choosing to move even when you're unsure, even when you're uninspired, even when you're alone. Every time you move with intention, you feed momentum. And when momentum grows, hesitation dies. Procrastination fades. Confidence sharpens. And you begin to feel the shift, the tilt in your favor. But remember, that tilt does not appear on day one. It appears when your actions outnumber your excuses. It appears when your standards outlast your feelings. It appears when your commitment becomes stronger than your fear of failure. And failure, let us speak of it clearly. You will fail. You will miss. You will stumble. But those are not the enemy. They are the tuition you pay to master yourself. No man has ever reached greatness without embracing failure as a teacher. The problem is not falling short. The problem is staying short. Let others judge you by appearances. Let them count you out because they don't see the scoreboard in your favor. What they cannot see is the work, the resilience, the invisible compounding of hours, thoughts, prayers, and sweat that is adding up beneath the surface. Let them doubt. Just never join them in that doubt. Doubt is not to be indulged. Doubt is to be dismissed. Because when you live from purpose, you no longer get to question your worth based on temporary outcomes. You have a mission. You have a code. You have a reason. And if your reason is strong enough, no temporary defeat can keep you down. You rise not because it's easy, but because it's who you are now. And that identity, your chosen, forged, and tested identity, is the key to everything you want. If you're struggling to succeed, it is not because you lack potential. It is because you have not yet become the man who is capable of holding the success you seek. There is a version of you who cannot handle the pressure, the discipline, the responsibility, the visibility of your next level. That version must die. And he will die not in a single moment, but slowly, daily, through every act of courage you perform in his place. You act like the man you are becoming, not the man you've been. You speak like the man who is already there. You think with the clarity of a king, not the hesitation of a beggar. You wake up and design your day. You no longer drift through it. You say no to what weakens you, even if it feels good. You say yes to what builds you, even if it costs you. You move with precision. You live with standards. And those standards become your fortress. Because no man builds a future without building a standard that protects it. The standard is what gets you up early. The standard is what keeps you from mediocrity. The standard is what silences your complaints and elevates your work ethic. And when the standard becomes who you are, not what you do sometimes, but who you are always, that is when the breakthrough becomes inevitable. It was never about the goal. T was about the man you had to become to reach it. And now you are becoming him. Not through luck, not through external help, but through sweat, through self-command, through choosing purpose every time the world offers distraction. That is your path. That is your process. That is your power. And so I say to you now, hold the line. The breakthrough is near. The tide is shifting. The silence is almost over. But even if it weren't, you would keep going. Because you've become the man who keeps going. Not for applause, not for comfort, but because you are built for this. Because your word means something. Because your future is not a fantasy, it is a contract. And you've signed it in full. That is how everything changes. Not through magic, not through moments of luck, but through the man who finally decides, I will become the one who finishes. And once you say those words and mean them, the world begins to reorganize around you, because now you are no longer struggling. You are rising.